Lisa,
Yes, baby girl.
when I grow up, I want to be a woman to society.
Then so shall you be.
Hey y'all, this is Lisa Landry. Welcome back to One Menace to Society. I'm so thrilled today. I have the privilege of speaking with the Senior Director at AHA Foundation. Please welcome to the podcast, Amanda Parker.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank you so much. You're very gracious to spend this time with me and my listeners. You know, I do want to say, some people are going to hear us say things that might affect them in a reactionary way. You know, we're going to talk about some topics that people I feel might not have all the information and just hear sort of what we're talking about and be offended. We're all dealing with so much PTSD at this point, you know, from watching what's on TV. So I just want to, you know, we're not bashing anybody as we speak. We're just going to talk about some truths of you and your foundation. I read your newsletter. Anybody can get that. It's an amazing source that you put out for everybody. Please tell my listeners, what is the mission of the AHA Foundation?
Our mission is a simple statement, and that is we believe in liberty for all. And a big part of that work is what I oversee, which is our women's rights work. And within that women's rights work, we are fighting honor violence, forced marriage, female genital mutilation, and child marriage here in the United States. And we essentially just want women and girls to be able to make their own decisions about their own lives and make their own decisions about their futures and about their bodies.
So what does a typical day look like for you as the senior director?
My day varies quite widely. I do a lot of traveling because a big part of my work is educating both professionals and general public about all of these issues and how to appropriately handle cases for those professionals that I speak with. But I also do a lot of work in talking to legislators about the fact that these issues are happening in the United States right now and that there are important steps that they can take to really better protect women and girls in the United States. So I, for example, tomorrow am headed to Arkansas because a legislator there just passed a very terrific anti-female genital mutilation bill that's going to do a lot of good for girls in the state of Arkansas. And I get to go celebrate with her tomorrow because the governor is signing the bill. So I'm really excited about that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And, on today, for example, I have been doing some outreach with legislators. I've been getting updates from my staff on what's happening in various states. And I am making plans for meeting with a survivor in a state where she is working to put in place anti-FGM laws as well. So I'm really looking forward to going and meeting her and working on the ground with her.
It sounds amazing what you're doing. Truly amazing. Are you getting a lot of help from both parties, or is one party more inclined to help you advocate?
You know, it really depends on the state where you're working in. And I would say, luckily for me, legislators tend to understand and organizations tend to understand that the issues that we're dealing with, particularly when we're talking about female genital mutilation and child marriage, which are the issues that we do the most policy work around, people really understand that these are issues of child abuse, and we're talking about protecting children. And it's something that is non-partisan or bipartisan, and something that legislators from both sides of the aisle can get on board to fight. And different states have different makeups between, whether they're more left-leaning or more right-leaning. And we have seen success in states across the board, no matter which way they lean. So that has really been enheartening, to be honest with you. And that's not 100% always the case, but that is generally the case, that legislators on both sides of the aisle understand that we're talking about protecting children and are willing to take steps to do so.
That makes me really happy to hear, especially because we are in such a partisan environment now where a lot of times we're not hearing what the other side has to say that might be good or might be helpful to everybody in the community.
Absolutely. And that is one thing that is a hurdle that we have to overcome a little bit, is that legislators are afraid of being perceived as infringing on someone else's religious rights or being perceived as anti-immigrant. But after we've talked to them a little bit, they understand that, these things that we're talking about are not mandated by any major religion. They are globally considered human rights abuses, and they are really standing up for children when they're standing against these abuses. So it's really great to have something that legislators can come together and get behind, and it's usually not a partisan fight. usually.
That is super cool. I like when grown-ups adult.
I love it too, and it's so unusual, right?
It's really, yeah, I really, this is kind of off topic, but I can't stand that phrase. I can't adult today. I'm not going to adult today. If you don't show up to be a grown-up, who's going to take care of the kids?
Yeah, it's a part of life, and we have to step up to handle our responsibilities. Absolutely.
Your organization is protecting women's rights and little girls' rights as well, which includes, like you said, raising awareness about FGM. Is it affecting that many girls here in the West? Because I thought it was just a tradition that was happening, or tradition. It's a very barbaric practice. I probably shouldn't be so judgmental, but let's be realistic. It's happening mostly in African and Middle Eastern countries. Is that a problem here?
It's also happening in Asian countries as well. But the fact is that this is definitely a problem that is in the United States right now. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention estimates that 500,000 women and girls are at risk or have undergone female genital mutilation in the United States. And when we learned that number, even those of us in the field, it was staggering to all of us. It's a shocking number, and it is an estimate because this is a practice that is very much underground, and it's hard to get real numbers of exactly what is happening here in the United States. But that estimate is shocking, and we know that there are actually some communities, including the Dawoodi community, which has been in the news recently because there's a trial that is going on in Michigan of a doctor who has been charged with performing female genital mutilations on little girls in Michigan, who's part of the Dawoodi community. That community is not even included in the CDC estimate of 513,000 women and girls who are at risk in the United States. So this is a bigger problem than most Americans realize, absolutely, if they're even aware that this is happening overseas.
Because think about it. I didn't know this took place in Asia as well. Thank you for letting me know that. 500,000, right?
500,000.
500,000. That's amazingly high of a number. And if that's the rest of the nation that you have stats on, and then you find out about this other doctor who's actually standing trial, which means theoretically he's had access to do this procedure to tons of little girls in that community.
One thing that I think is going to be a surprise is that it's a female doctor. And the practice is typically perpetuated by the females within society. It's moms and grandmas who are pushing to have this done, and it's oftentimes female practitioners who are the ones who are doing the cutting. That's not to say that it's the women who are solely to blame for this. This is definitely a community-wide problem that is pressure from men, community leaders, women, grandparents, everyone across the board, and it's in large part it's about making sure that a girl is marriageable. So if we had men and boys standing up and saying they only wanted to marry girls who had not been cut, who did not undergo female genital mutilation, then that would go a really long ways to curbing the practice.
Yeah, I don't know about that happening. I do know that, I have heard, though, that the women have to do it. It's kind of like Western patriarchy. If you want to be successful by old standards, you have to be like the guys. So it's kind of that same idea. Like, you have to stay in your lane. You have to stay where you're supposed to. Otherwise, you're kind of creating a threat to the structure if you speak out and don't get your daughter cut, right?
Oh, absolutely. And, the practice of female genital mutilation is all about control. It's about controlling the sexuality of women and girls. And it's perpetuated by this idea that the honor of an entire family rests on the virginity of the female members of the family. And they are cutting the genitals of girls because they think that it's going to reduce their libido. It's going to make it less likely that they have sex outside of wedlock, and it's going to make it so that in the more severe forms of female genital mutilation, it's going to make it so that you can prove virginity on the wedding night.
What are the medical benefits of FGM?
That's a great question, Lisa, and I'm so glad you asked. There are no benefits, medical or otherwise, there are no medical benefits to female genital mutilation, and there are lifelong physical and psychological consequences that go along with the procedure. A girl who has undergone female genital mutilation immediately following the procedure might face severe blood loss, shock, infection. She might die. There are definitely girls who die directly following the procedure. and it's heartbreaking. Long term, she might face infertility, difficulties during sex and childbirth. She has a higher rate of death of her infant and of maternal death during childbirth. Every psychological disorder in the book that you can find, she's more likely to face self-harm and suicide for sure. This is something that is incredibly harmful and has no health benefits that go along with it.
Well, plus just psychologically too, like you don't have the release of orgasm. So how do you, get rid of your tensions? Because we're hormonally driven.
Well, one thing, it's certainly it can make it so that you're not able to orgasm, but the clitoris is an organ that is way bigger than most people know unless you've got a medical background, and there's no way to remove the full clitoris without killing a woman because it goes deep in your body. So there are definitely women who have undergone female genital mutilation, even if their clitoris was removed, that, from the outside, that are still able to orgasm. But the fact that people are trying to make it impossible for a woman to have an orgasm is horrific, and it's even in the least severe forms. I think we should probably talk about the different types of female genital mutilation.
Okay.
The most severe is where a girl is taken behind closed doors, her legs are held apart, and a sharp instrument, usually a razor blade, maybe scissors or a knife, is used to cut away at her genitals, and as much as possible of the exterior of her genitalia are removed. So the clitoris, the inner and outer labia, and then the wound that is left is sewn almost entirely shut with just a small hole left for urination and menstruation. And I think it's really important that we talk about it in that level of detail, and in that, as difficult it is to hear about and to think about, because it's really important that we don't conflate it with male circumcision. And I'm not saying that we're pro or against male circumcision at the AHA Foundation. I'm just saying that what we're talking about is a completely different thing. And it can be a very, very severe form of physical mutilation, frankly. There are less severe forms. The least severe is like pricking, piercing the clitoris and making a girl bleed. But even in the least severe forms, there are potential lifelong health and psychological consequences that go along with it. So even in those less severe forms, because you're working on this tiny little piece of anatomy of a little girl, even if you're not intending to do much physical harm when you're doing this practice on her, it's very, very difficult to not leave unintended scarring and do more damage than you're intending to do. So even if you were trying to go for one of the least physically invasive forms, that doesn't mean that she's not going to have lasting physical consequences. So the World Health Organization says that female genital mutilation should not be performed, not in any of its forms, and not even by a healthcare provider.
And you're saying that a lot of times it's not even a healthcare provider performing these procedures.
That's correct. Unfortunately, this is something that is very often done by a traditional practitioner and without anesthesia.
And how old are these little girls? Does it range, the age range? Is it all over the place, or is there like an average age?
There's quite a range, but typically it's around, from 4 to 12 or so that this is happening to little girls.
Okay, so this could be a 4-year-old little girl, and if her mother doesn't get the procedure done to her, her mother could be in trouble.
Sure.
So think about
what
is that doing to a mom, to have to know that she has no choice but to have this inflicted upon her daughter. Otherwise, she will have no standing in her social group and family.
Absolutely. And one of the reasons that we really try hard to put in place anti-female genital mutilation laws in every single U.S. state is that we know from working with women and girls who are facing female genital mutilation, or moms who are being pressured to cut their little girls, is that they will use strong existing legislation as an excuse to people who are pressuring them as to why they can't do this. So they'll say, listen, I would absolutely do this, but I could get in a lot of trouble if I do it. I could go to jail if I cut my little girl. So the best case scenario of putting in place any law is prevention. And that's what we're trying to do is prevent little girls from being cut. And we know that moms and parents are facing pressure from community members and from family members, maybe back in their country of origin, to push them to do this to their girls. And any tool that we can give them to help them resist is a bonus and a plus in my book.
Yeah, because that's like intergenerational torture. My heart breaks for those moms who don't want to be involved, and dads too, and grandmas and grandpas who don't want to be involved in this, and they are experiencing pressure. So you said that it's illegal in some places, but it's not illegal in other places here in America?
We do have a federal law that makes it illegal in the United States to perform female genital mutilation on little girls, but there's a case happening in Michigan right now, and the federal judge overseeing that case essentially ruled that our federal law making female genital mutilation a crime is unconstitutional, that this is something the states should be mandating against. This isn't the job of the federal government. This is the job of the states to do law enforcement and to mandate that FGM does not happen.
Why would he say something like that? Child abuse is a federal crime. If it's already been decided, who is he to say it's not such?
Lisa, I completely agree with you.
That's crazy. Did he get paid off, do you think? Is he a dirty... Did you look through his record? You probably can't answer that. But he's got to have ulterior motives.
I think that there are some judges that are very opinionated and strong in their opinions that the federal government has their rights and the states have their rights, and he is one of those judges that is very, very strong on states' rights. And I don't think that he had an ulterior motive. I think that he didn't fully understand female genital mutilation. He said that the federal government has to have a reason under the Constitution to make anything illegal. And our argument is that because of the Commerce Clause, this should be made illegal on a federal basis. And essentially, the Commerce Clause would make it's kind of complex, but basically, female genital mutilation is transactional by nature. In the case that happened in Michigan, girls were taken across state lines. They were brought in from Illinois and from Minnesota to be cut. This is also a medical procedure, or, it's something that's done for what they think of as a medical procedure, even though it has no health benefits. It's something that is done as a service for payment. This is something that is definitely transactional, and girls are taken across state lines to have the procedure. So from our perspective, it's clear that this is something that is allowable under the Commerce Clause, and we're really hoping that that is upheld when the appeal happens. But there is no guarantee, and it just really shows the urgency for every single U.S. state to have a law that says this is specifically illegal, and that puts in place strong protections for girls and also has strong education and outreach provisions to really work at prevention.
Well, I hope that happens, and I hope the judge who hears this appeals case has at least made his wife reach orgasm.
I'm with you, Lisa. I hope so too.
Amanda Parker, you are fantastic, and I'm blown away with the information you're sharing. I'm horrified that this practice is so widespread in the West. I had no idea. I feel so bad for my sisters who have experienced it or are being threatened by this procedure in their future. How do we get involved? You're advocating, you're out there talking to people driving ballots and people in legislatures around America. How do we get involved as citizens?
Lisa, the best way to get involved is really to go to our website, which is the ahafoundation.org, and find out if your state has a law against female genital mutilation. If it doesn't, send an email or a letter to your legislator and let them know that this is something that is important to you and that you want to see happen in your state. Help us raise awareness, share things on social media, share on Facebook. Anything that you can do to help raise awareness, to let your friends know that this is happening right here in our own communities, to our own friends and colleagues and neighbors, is helpful in stopping this practice from happening here in the United States. So get educated, raise awareness, let your legislators know this is important to you.
Amanda, thank you so much for fighting for liberty and for protecting girls and women and their babies too, the little boys who are affected by this because their mothers die in childbirth. Will you please come back and speak with me in the future?
I'd love to. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank you so very much, Amanda Parker with AHA Foundation. Please check them out online. Thanks so much for listening, y'all. Please do check out ahafoundation.org. You can read about what they are doing over there to protect girls and women. Thanks for listening. Please join me at lisalandry.com. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do so, don't cost you nothing. And you'll know when each new podcast drops every Woman is Wednesday. We got some really good episodes coming up. Thanks for the support, y'all. Ari Bear, I love you. You know, it's important to fight for everybody's liberty. Not just boys. Girls need liberty too.